AEW is not a new company anymore. This is great because it means we've gone through phases and now we can look back at some eras and wonder what the flub was happening. It's like anything in that sense because at the time it was logical, we've just moved forward, and what once was now isn't something. So let's take a walk down memory lane, and yes, I am Simon Miller. Here's 10 totally bonkers AEW main events. Number 10, Jon Moxley vs. Joey Janella at Fyter Fest 2019. It's almost strange to remember that Joey Janella was in AEW full stop. I don't mean that as a slight either. He's just gone on to do other things that your brain forgets. He was a major part of the original vision though, to the point at Fyter Fest 2019, he did indeed go one-on-one with Jon Moxley, who had hair. Now technically the main event of the card was the Elite vs. the Lucha Brothers, but as Joey vs. Jon was an unsanctioned fight, it went on last. Don't get mad at me, I don't make the rules. Mox had also recently debuted at Double or Nothing, and as he needed a big win, he was put against Joey Janela so these two could smash lumps out of each other. Seriously, this got violent, tables, barbed wire, and thumbtacks. You cannot fault the effort, and actually this turned out to be really important. Underlined how different AEW was aiming to be. If they advertised a street fight, damn it, that's what you were gonna get. Looking back years on, however, yeah, it almost feels like a different place. Number 9, Dustin Rhodes vs. Nick Comoroto on the June 4th, 2021 Dynamite. I love stuff like this. There will be critics, but I want AEW to be an alternative, so take random guys and yeah, throw them into the main event and see what happens. We have 52 weeks of programming a year. You're allowed to take some flipping risks. Nick Comoroto was such a guy who found himself in this position, and hey, he insulted me for not having hair around the same time, so flub that guy. Because this is the internet, I now have to point out he was joking, and it was very funny. We're all totally ruined. Nick was facing trainer Dustin Rhodes here, and to make it stand out, it was a bull rope match, a Rhodes family signature stipulation. The bigger feud that was hanging over the top was Dustin and QT Marshall, and as Comoroto was one of QT's guys, well, whoop, there it is. Of course, the former Goldust won, and sure, it was a bit crazy we just threw this rule set into a random Dynamite, but we all know the deal nowadays. That's just what we do. You also get an amazing match between the Young Bucks and Death Triangle on this show. I know that could have been the main event, but here's the thing. It wasn't. I'm not going to get all uppity over a 3-year-old episode of Dynamite. Number 8, Bryan Danielson vs. Yu Nakayama on the 24th of February 2024 Collision. Because Bryan Danielson wanted it. That was that. He went full Dave Bautista. I think it's quite nice Tony Khan goes out of his way to ensure those on their way out are allowed to have a perfect exit. Because wrestlers do give a lot. They deserve something on the other end. So when Danielson was desperate to face Mexican superstar Blue Panther and Japanese legend Yu Nakayama, he had to go to CMLL to do the former, but when it came to the latter, we just did it on Collision. The two first met in the mid-2000s when they faced each other in a series of tag team matches for Noah, so I suppose Bryan must have had a good time. He did not want to wrap up his full-time career before he had a chance to take on Yoon one-on-one. Akiyama was 54 years old when he stepped into the ring for this too, but I tell you, he can hold his own, and 2024 for the American Dragon was basically flawless. He may be too good. It lacks suspense because Danielson was always going to win, but you watch this to feel the joy in your tum-tum. A man smiling ear to ear as he got to face one of his heroes. It really is quite lovely. Number 7, Chris Jericho vs. Nick Gage at Fight for the Fallen 2021. Well, this one caused some controversy. We all remember. Just as Nick Gage was using a pizza cutter to wreck Chris Jericho's head, we went to the adverts and yeah, there was a commercial for Domino's. This did not go down well. What we really should talk about is this was the TV main event, and it was a bloodbath. Jericho went through glass, for goodness sake, cry me a river, and Nick was basically the Nick you'd expect, even though beforehand nobody expected it. What? I just think we all thought Gage would have to switch to Chris's style in order to get his shot on Dynamite, but no. It went the other way, and this was so gruesome, we even got light tubes. There was a story as MJF was trying to put Jericho through the ringer so they wouldn't have to have a scrap, but yeah, I couldn't believe it, and then I rewatched it for this video, and I am still stunned. The fact this happened on a special edition on a Wednesday, the new wrestling world had arrived. I don't want to be that guy either because there is no right or wrong, but WWE would have never have done this. The fact that somebody now would, well, it was different to say the least. Maybe a little bit nuts. Number 6, Chris Jericho and Jake Hagar versus Luther and Serpentico on the 7th of October 2020 Dynamite. Though it's fair to say this was Chris Jericho celebrating his 30th year in the business with his friends, but more power to him. There's always areas we can criticize, but I would like to do this with my buddies if I was in such a fortunate position. Let people have their fun. The rumor was always AEW had tried to get Lance Storm to step in here so Jericho could mirror his first ever match, but I don't think Lance was interested. Given Luther was a guy with a shared history, however, bam, here he was. There was also the relationship between Chris and Jake Hagar, which had been well documented because they were boys back in WWE. I guess Serpentico was just happy to be there. It was an odd main event just because there was a random element to it, but let's not pretend Jericho wasn't integral to establishing AEW no matter what you think of him now. I suppose this served as somewhat of a thank you. The other thing to note from this episode is that we also got Cody Rhodes versus Brody Lee in a dog collar match, which very sadly would also turn out to be the last of Lee's career. Really is still so sad. Number 5, the Devil's Masked Men versus MJF at New Year's Smash 2023. Some people dubbed the MJF versus the Devil feud as the worst of 2023, and I thought that was a little bit unfair. The intentions were good, but the whole thing was cursed, ironically. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. It brought us to New Year's Smash in December 2023 when, the Devil had some henchmen, like all evil beings do, and they wanted to end Maxwell Jacob Friedman and Adam Cole. Then they would take the Ring of Honor tag titles. This ties back into those problems as Cole was injured at the time, so Max had to go it alone, so he lost. I mean, that does make sense. He was just taking a defeat from nobody. These guys at the time were random figures. Eventually the Goons were revealed as Matt Taven and Mike Bennett, so at least that worked. It's fair to say by this point the story had fallen by the wayside, but nobody really wanted to see it in the main event. Number 4, the Golden Dragons versus Brian Cage and the Don Callis family on the November 15, 2023 Dynamite. Sponsored wrestling matches. They always annoy someone. As a massive video game nerd, this one made me happy because AEW was promoting Like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name. It's the most bonkers title ever. Everybody here wore the right clothes too, meaning Kenny Omega, Chris Jericho, Kota Ibushi, Paul White, Brian Cage, Takeshita, Carl Fletcher, and Powerhouse Hobbs were in suits. It was just fun. Weird, but fun. That was basically the match itself too, because they fought all over the place, including the moment that won wrestling. Ibushi cycling to the ring on a bike, hitting people with a pipe. It was so mad. I loved it. Come at me. The Heroes won after Omega pinned Cage, and if you had never seen wrestling before, I imagine you were really confused. That's fair. Sort of captured the spirit of AEW, however. That meant something. Number 3, Jon Moxley versus Mark Sterling on the September 2nd, 2020 Dynamite. Mark Sterling is a wrestler. I swear people forget wrestling is predetermined because a huge group of people think he's actually a lawyer. You are all silly. This episode of Dynamite was capped off with Moxley facing Sterling, though, mostly due to him using his solicitor powers. Him and client MJF had wanted John to be banned from using the Death Rider at the upcoming pay-per-view. Moxley wasn't happy, which is why Mark got it here, and he killed this poor man. He even hit him with a shoe. The revenge was instant as Maxwell jumped Jonathan and left him a bloody mess, so we had our angle, but hey. Facts are facts. Sterling main evented a Wednesday night. He should probably go and remind Chris Jericho of this too. Do you remember when from nowhere Jericho said that Mark Sterling was the lowest of the low? That felt really unnecessary. Number 2, Adam Copeland versus Minoru Suzuki on the January 24, 2024 Dynamite. I can sum this one up easily. Go back to WrestleMania 37 and imagine I told you that man in the main event a few years after this would be closing another show, but it would be against Japanese legend and angry man Minoru Suzuki. Nobody would have believed it. This is another reason why AEW existing is so cool, because for a long time this just wasn't possible. In fact, I will go on record and say before it was impossible. There was no way. The real joy is that Adam Copeland was 50 years old with Suzuki being 55, and they just kicked each other's ass. It was during that time when Adam wanted to prove he could hang with the AEW crew, and he did. It also closed the show, so this shall be a truth forever, and it was just so mad to see. Copeland got the win as he was heading towards another mad match with Malachi Black, and it's just entertaining, man. Never stop. Number 1, Bryan Danielson versus Satanam Singh on the May 22nd, 2024 Dynamite. So I have no issues with this because I am Dr. Robotnik. Bring me the chaos. Now the oddness comes to the fact Satanam barely wrestled on TV when from nowhere, he was main eventing Dynamite. I suppose it was another guy Bryan just wanted to fight, but still, what the flub is happening? The story was the Young Bucks had put a hit out on the American Dragon and this giant accepted. Fans were slightly irked, especially because it ended in a DQ caused by Jeff Jarrett. So yeah, again, how did any of this come to be? There's 6 degrees of separation with this, but you can tell your grandkids about this the day that the dragon took on the giant. Know of any other mad AEW pay-per-views that would blow somebody's brain? Make sure you let us know in the comments below before you like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Then you can click the video on the screen to get even more AEW facts from yours truly, but forget all that and just have a good day, my buddies. And I will talk to you again soon.